So how are you guys doing this morning? Good. Good, good, good. So what I'm going to invite you to do, once again, just for a few moments, is I'm going to ask you these questions again that I asked you yesterday morning. And those of you who've looked at those questions may have already started to realize that they are quite deep questions, that there's a whole bunch stacked up in them. So if I say, what are some of your bigger insights? What's presupposed by the word some?
There are others.
Sure, there are others. And some of your bigger insights, what's presupposed by that?
You've got smaller lots of.
Yeah, you've got a scale, you've got a range. See, if I say, what's your biggest insight? People will go, or what's your best memory? What's your happiest moment? But if you say happier, or what are some of, then there's a range. People don't.
Freedom to answer.
To choose, yeah. Your freedom of choice. So what are some of your bigger insights, discoveries, and learnings so far in your journey of conversational belief change mastery? Now, when we say journey, see, as human beings, we, at a conscious level, we process very metaphorically. At an unconscious level, there is no metaphor. It's all literal. But for a lot of people, life is experienced as a journey. It's one of the metaphors that people use for life, and it's one of the metaphors that I structured right from when I first started marketing this stuff, that this is a journey, that it's a process of mastery, that mastery isn't a switch that you flick on or off, that it's a process. And it's, in a way, an attitude to your learning. So, yeah, the question, what are some of your bigger insights, discoveries, and learnings so far in your journey of conversational belief change mastery? Is actually quite a deep question, just in order to process that and go, let's see, what are some of my, and so on and so forth, has a whole bunch of stuff in it. Also, the words insights, discoveries, and learnings are called nominalizations. So they take a lot of processing power because they sound like things, don't they? They sound like a thing, like a cup or a card or a piece of paper. But actually, the old NLP test is, can you put it in a wheelbarrow? When it comes to insights, discoveries, and learnings, you can't really, because they're on the inside. And that takes a lot more processing power for your brain to kind of connect with. It's like the scoop it sends into reference cup, because you hear the word cup and your brain goes, what's that? It goes, bip, and comes up with a form of some sort, is a lot more specific than the scoop that goes for the word insight or discoveries or learnings. So as you process those words, as you process insights and discoveries and learnings, there's different stuff going on in your neurophysiology. You may even be noticing that now as you hear me talk about those things, that it's kind of spacey because your unconscious is making a lot more connections. Sure. So yeah, the first question is, what are some of your bigger insights, discoveries, and learnings so far in your journey of conversational belief change mastery? So you might like to note down a couple of your thoughts about that. Maybe even stuff that's come up since we started yesterday or since we started the day before. Just note down a couple of ideas. Just take a moment or two to do that. Just jot down a few of your ideas, the things that stand out, the things that particularly resonate for you or that you connect with at a deep level. What are some of your bigger insights, discoveries, and learnings so far in your journey of conversational belief change mastery? And then my next question was, what are some of the things you're particularly curious and motivated to explore more deeply as you continue moving forward? Now, what's presupposed by particularly curious and motivated? What's presupposed by that?
That's your main, one of your main ones.
Yeah, that there are some that you're quite motivated and curious about, and others that you're really curious and motivated about, particularly curious and motivated about, to explore more deeply. So when I say that you're curious to explore more deeply, what's presupposed by that? It's already deep, it's already being explored. It's also ambiguous, to explore more deeply. Does it mean to explore more deeply or to explore more deeply? So it's ambiguous. Now, you may say, yeah, it's not very ambiguous, but your brain will process both of those meanings before deciding which of those meanings to present to your conscious mind. Does that make sense? And so the very fact that your unconscious has processed both those meanings means that both of those, remember I said, no one ever does anything until they first imagine doing it. So just by processing both of those meanings, that new set of possibilities is opened up. As you continue moving forward. So what's presupposed by continuing moving forward?
You're already moving forward.
Bingo. Yeah. So what are some of the things you're particularly curious and motivated to explore more deeply as you continue moving forward? And then the last question is, what are some of the ways you can already imagine putting what you are learning into practice and taking action in the days, weeks, and months to come? So what's presupposed by you can already imagine putting what you're learning into practice? You can already imagine. What's presupposed by that?
You already have the skill to do it?
Certainly. Well, maybe.
You don't need to make an effort to do it because it's already there.
Maybe. Yeah. Some of the ways you don't. These are the things that you can already imagine.
Yeah.
What's presupposed by the already, though?
You're doing it now.
Yeah.
It exists.
Yeah. All of those. And also that there's more to come. There are ways that you can already imagine of putting it into action, and then there are ways that you haven't yet discovered that you can put it into action, but you will. That's presupposed in the word already. So what are some of the ways you can already imagine putting what you are learning into practice and taking action in the days, weeks, and months to come? See, presuppositions get processed by the unconscious mind in order for you to make sense of the sentence. By the time you've made sense of the sentence, the presuppositions have all been processed. It's very, very powerful.
Say that again, please.
Presuppositions are what must be true in order for a sentence to make sense. So for instance, if I say, the pig flew across the sky. In order for you to even understand what that means and decide whether it's true or false, you first have to accept that there exists such a thing as a pig, that flying is possible, that there exists such a thing as a sky, that there are qualities of a sky that make it possible to cross, so it's got some sort of size or distance or width to it. That at least it's possible to imagine pigs flying. That it's, that's possible. That there's a specific pig. That there's a specific sky. The word "the" presupposes that. And there are deeper presuppositions as well. Many, many levels of presupposition. Just in a simple sentence like that. So a sentence like, what are some of the ways you can already imagine putting what you are learning into practice and taking action in the days, weeks, and months to come? Has many presuppositions in it, all of which must be accepted as true, even for the sentence to make sense. So even if you say, in response to this, pigs can't fly, and that's my final, position on it, all the presuppositions have still been accepted as true in order for you to come back with that response. Does that make sense? And by the time you've made sense of the sentence, all the presuppositions have been processed.
There was a study where there was, they gave people these kind of false facts, and then discounted them afterwards to a number of people, and then after it, they then asked them which of those things are false, and there was a distorted, even though the people knew of what was absolutely not true, or they thought they knew, there was a distorted, this disparity of percentage that had still been affected. It almost stayed in the idea of the suggestion of these things are.
Sure.
And just by hearing, I guess, the presuppositions, it stayed with them.
Well, there's also the thing of primacy. The first thing you hear is the one that's likely to stay with you, except when it's not. But it's given a greater, primacy and recency. So the first thing you hear at the beginning of a training and the last thing you hear at the end of it are the things that they say that you would be most likely to remember the very next day if someone asks you. Primacy and recency. It's not necessarily the case, and there are ways to ensure that everything gets included. But yeah, sure. So get into groups of 3 and just compare notes. And just take about 6 minutes to compare your notes on this, your responses to these questions. By the way, we've been covering a lot of ground over the last few days. If any of you are thinking, oh gosh, I don't know how I'm going to remember all this stuff or anything like that, just say thank you to that thought. Just say thank you to it. I was in a training with Richard Bandler once, and this guy had a tape recorder on in the front row, and Bandler was like, switch off your tape recorder. And the guy goes, I'm worried that I won't remember it. And he said, forget the number 617. Have you forgotten it yet? The guy's like, no, 617. He's like, well, if you can't remember a little number, how are you going to forget a whole training? Or rather, if you can't forget a little number, how are you going to not remember a whole training? It's a good question. Anyway, so get into 3s.
You can still remember the number, which is even better.
Maybe.